Hello everyone, and welcome to my Young and the Restless official 24 channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Victor Newman stormed into the shadow room in Los Angeles with the kind of controlled fury that could freeze a room solid, his eyes scanning the dimly lit space until they landed squarely on the man who had caused more chaos in the Newman family than anyone could have imagined, Matt Clark, the man also known as Mitch Bacall. Matt, lounging casually against the bar, looked up, a smirk curling across his face as if he had been expecting Victor all along. The tension was electric, thick enough to choke on. "They deserve every bit of hell that's coming their way," Matt said to Detective Burrow, who had been hovering silently nearby, sensing the storm that was about to erupt. Victor's jaw tightened, his entire body radiating an unstoppable force as he declared, "Well, I'll be damned." Matt Clark, the weight of his words hanging in the air like a guillotine poised to fall. The confrontation had been inevitable. Victor had watched quietly from the sidelines as Matt's schemes against Nick and Noah Newman escalated, knowing all along that this man had no moral compass, no boundaries, and no intention of stopping. And now, here he was, in the flesh, daring to look Victor in the eye. "You think you can come into our lives, ruin everything, and walk away unscathed?" Victor demanded, his voice a low growl, every syllable dripping with a lethal promise. "You've messed with Nick. You've messed with Noah. But now, Matt, you've messed with me, and that is a line you do not cross." Matt tilted his head slightly, a mocking glint in his eye, as if Victor's words were nothing more than background noise in his carefully orchestrated symphony of chaos. "Noah's the one who hit the sheets with my wife," Matt replied coolly, attempting to deflect, to muddy the waters and instill doubt. But Victor wasn't listening. The Sienna Bacall scandal, the infidelity, the betrayals, they were irrelevant in this moment. What mattered, what had always mattered, was the safety and supremacy of the Newman family. Matt Clark was a threat, a lethal, unpredictable threat, and Victor was a man who did not tolerate loose ends. He had built his empire on power, on precision, and on the unyielding protection of his own, and Matt was standing in the path of that legacy. Meanwhile, back in Genoa City, Jack Abbott had called an emergency family meeting at Jabot, where Ashley and Tracy Abbott sat, tense, sensing the gravity of what Jack was about to reveal. His plan was risky, dangerous even, and he could see the concern etched across their faces. "Victor has a weapon," Jack said cautiously, letting the words settle like a stone in their stomachs. "A weapon that could bury Jabot permanently." The room went silent, the air thick with shock and disbelief. Ashley's hand instinctively went to her mouth, Tracy's eyes narrowed in disbelief, and Jack felt the weight of the decision pressing down on him. He had a plan, yes, but there was no guarantee it would be welcomed, no guarantee the Abbotts would approve, and no guarantee that the end result would be clean. But one thing was certain, in the face of Victor Newman's unstoppable drive and Matt Clark's unhinged menace, inaction was not an option. The stakes had escalated beyond anything Jack had ever faced, and while he wrestled with the morality of his plan, he knew that it was only a matter of time before the collision in Los Angeles would have ripple effects that could shake both families to their cores. Meanwhile, Audra Charles was having her own meltdown at Crimson Lights. Her eyes, glossy with frustration and anger, fixed on Nate Hastings as if trying to will him to see her pain. She had apologized, begged, and pleaded, but Nate's icy demeanor, the way he looked at her as if she were a ghost of mistakes past, told her everything she needed to know. Forgiveness was out of reach. And to make matters worse, Nate had been moving on, the shadow of Victoria Newman growing ever larger in his personal orbit, pouring salt into a wound that Audra felt would never heal. The tension between them was palpable, and Audra's frustration bubbled over, a storm of emotion she could no longer contain. "You just don't get it, do you, Nate?" she snapped, her voice trembling with the force of her own heartbreak. Nate said nothing, and in that silence, she found the cruel clarity she had feared. He was done, and no amount of remorse could change that. In Los Angeles, the confrontation escalated further. Matt, sensing the full force of Victor's presence and wrath, attempted to charm, to manipulate, but every word he uttered was met with Victor's unflinching stare, a look that promised retribution and consequence. You think your little schemes can touch my family and that I won't respond? Victor's voice was sharp, cutting through the smoke and shadows of the shadow room like a blade. I've spent my life building, defending, and protecting. And you, Matt, are a threat that cannot be ignored. The room seemed to shrink around them, the tension so thick that Detective Burrow, ever the observer, could almost feel it pressing against his chest. Every eye, every movement, every breath was charged with anticipation. Victor's presence alone was a force that bent the space around him. His legacy, his power, and his ruthless precision were all on display, and Matt was beginning to realize that the predator he had underestimated was the very man standing in front of him. You want a war? Matt hissed, trying to regain some semblance of control. But Victor's response was a steely calm, a calculated menace that only amplified the danger. No, Matt. I want order. I want justice. I want you to understand that when you cross the Newman family, there is no mercy. It was a moment suspended in time, a chess game of life and death, where every word could be the trigger for disaster. Back in Genoa City, Jack was pacing, his mind racing as he considered the implications of Victor's move. The weapon Jack spoke of was not just literal, it was symbolic, a tool of power that could shift the balance, destroy reputations, and ignite conflict on a scale the Abbotts had not yet comprehended. I don't know if they'll like it, Jack admitted to Ashley and Tracy, his voice low, the gravity of the situation weighing down every syllable. But in this game, sometimes you have to be the one willing to make the move no one else will. And right now, doing nothing is worse than doing something risky. Ashley looked at him, her mind racing through possibilities and consequences, while Tracy's brows furrowed in concern, realizing that the line between calculated strategy and reckless endangerment was razor-thin. Every decision carried a weight, every action a potential catastrophe, and yet the clock was ticking. Victor's confrontation with Matt was already in motion, and the ripple effect would reach Jabot sooner than anyone realized. As Victor continued to hold his ground in Los Angeles, the intensity between him and Matt reached an almost unbearable crescendo. Matt, feeling the walls closing in, tried to manipulate, to throw Victor off balance with half-truths and provocations. But Victor was unmoved. Every attempt to provoke was met with a measured, lethal calm, a reminder that Victor Newman was not a man to be trifled with, that his family, his empire, and his legacy were worth more than any petty schemes. You've made a grave mistake, Matt, Victor said, the words reverberating like a thunderclap through the room. This isn't about petty revenge. This is about survival, yours, mine, and everyone I care about. And right now, you're on the wrong side of all of it. Detective Burrow watched silently, a witness to a showdown that felt more like an execution in progress than a mere confrontation. Matt's smirk faltered, his confidence shaken, and for the first time, he sensed the gravity of the storm he had unleashed. The power, the control, and the ruthlessness that Victor wielded were not just for show, they were a warning, a promise, and a threat all at once. In Genoa City, Jack's conversation with Ashley and Tracy continued to weigh heavily on his conscience. Every step of his plan, every contingency he had considered, now felt precarious, the line between success and catastrophe impossibly thin. Victor's in LA, Jack reminded them, his tone serious, and he's not holding back. Whatever we do, we have to be ready for anything. This is bigger than any of us imagined. Ashley and Tracy exchanged worried glances, understanding that the coming days would test not only their loyalty and courage but their ability to survive in a world where power, deception, and danger were constant companions. Meanwhile, Audra's struggle with Nate remained unresolved, the emotional fallout threatening to spill into every corner of her life. She watched as he moved on, seemingly unfazed by the pain she carried, and in that moment, the realization struck her with devastating clarity: some mistakes could never be forgiven, and some hearts could never be mended. The interplay of emotion, power, and vengeance created a tapestry of tension so intricate that every character, every decision, and every revelation had the potential to change the landscape of their lives forever. As Victor prepared to take decisive action against Matt Clark, Jack braced for the fallout of his own risky strategy, and Audra faced the painful truth of a love lost. The residents of Genoa City and Los Angeles alike were poised on the edge of a knife. Each decision, each confrontation, each revelation carried stakes that could not be ignored. And in the midst of it all, the underlying truth remained: in this world of ambition, betrayal, and unrelenting pursuit of power, no one was truly safe, and the consequences of one man's vendetta could ripple across cities, families, and hearts with devastating precision. Victor's confrontation with Matt was not just a battle, it was a declaration, a promise, and a warning. Jack's plan was not merely a strategy, it was a gamble with consequences that could shatter legacies. And Audra's heartbreak was not just personal, it was a reminder of the human cost of deception and obsession. Together, these intertwined threads formed a narrative of tension, danger, and high stakes, each moment dripping with the dramatic potential that could only exist in a world where power, revenge, and emotion collided with unstoppable force. In the weeks to come, secrets would be revealed, alliances tested, and lives forever changed, all as Victor Newman asserted his dominance over a man who had dared to threaten everything he held dear. Jack Abbott walked the thin line between genius and recklessness, and Audra Charles grappled with a love that could not be reclaimed, leaving the residents of Genoa City and Los Angeles to face the inevitable fallout of ambition, betrayal, and unyielding determination. And as Victor stood over Matt, unyielding and formidable, the message was clear: the Newman family does not forgive, does not forget, and most importantly, does not back down. Victor Newman stood over Matt Clark, the weight of his presence almost suffocating in the dimly lit shadow room. Every muscle in Victor's body was taut, a predator coiled and ready to strike, and every flicker of movement from Matt was measured and calculated, though increasingly nervous under the intensity of Victor's gaze. "Do you really think you can get away with this?" Victor growled, his voice low but carrying the threat of imminent violence. Matt attempted to maintain his composure, shifting slightly, trying to project control, but Victor's sudden movements and razor-sharp intensity made that impossible. "I've handled men far stronger than you, Matt. Men smarter than you," Victor continued, his words slicing through the haze of smoke and tension. "And you? You're nothing more than a nuisance that's about to be dealt with permanently." Matt's smirk faltered. For the first time, he hesitated, the smirk replaced by a flicker of genuine concern. He tried to throw Victor off balance with sarcasm, attempting to redirect the blame. "Well, Victor, maybe you should talk to Noah about all this. He's the one who—" Victor's hand shot up, cutting him off mid-sentence. "Don't. You don't get to bring anyone else into this. This is between you and me now, Matt. Nick and Noah might have their problems, but they're my blood. And no one, gets to hurt them without facing the consequences. You're playing a game you can't win." The air in the shadow room was electric. Detective Burrow remained on the sidelines, a silent observer to a confrontation that could easily tip into something deadly at any moment. Matt glanced at Burrow, seeking some hint of support, some way to pull a lifeline, but the detective's expression was unreadable, and the reality sank in: he was alone. Alone against Victor Newman, a man whose reputation for vengeance was not just legend but fact. Meanwhile, back in Genoa City, Jack Abbott's revelation to Ashley and Tracy about Victor having a weapon capable of burying Jabot had left the Abbott siblings reeling. "This isn't just some corporate maneuver," Jack said, pacing, his mind clearly racing through every angle. "Victor's not bluffing. And if we do nothing, it's not just our company, it's our legacy that's at risk." Ashley shook her head, trying to process the enormity of the news. "Jack, a weapon? You mean like, an actual weapon, or a figurative one? Something that could ruin everything we've built?" Jack stopped, turning to face her, his expression grim. "Both. Victor has the means to destroy Jabot completely. Financially, publicly, and yes, figuratively, he could ruin us beyond repair. That's why I'm putting a plan into motion. But I need to know you both understand the stakes. Once this is in motion, there's no turning back." Tracy's eyes narrowed, fear and doubt flashing in them. "And what if it backfires, Jack? What if whatever you're planning only makes things worse?" Jack sighed, the weight of leadership pressing down on him. "Then we deal with it. That's all we can do. But doing nothing? That guarantees disaster." He looked at both sisters, seeing the hesitation and concern, and knew he had to frame the next part carefully. Victor is going to LA to confront Matt. I have a plan, yes, but it's risky. If we act, we might stop him. But if we fail, we could lose everything. Back in Los Angeles, Victor circled Matt like a predator, the sheer force of his presence filling the room. Do you even realize what you've done, Matt? Victor asked, his voice chillingly calm but loaded with menace. Do you understand what it means to threaten my family? To toy with Nick and Noah? Matt attempted to speak, to defend himself, but Victor's glare silenced him instantly. You see, Matt, there are consequences for your actions. Real consequences. And right now, you're about to learn just how far I'll go to protect what's mine. Matt's smirk was gone now, replaced by a flash of genuine fear. His hand shook slightly, and he realized that every ounce of charm and manipulation he had relied on in the past meant nothing here. Victor Newman was not a man to be played, he was a force of nature, a man whose patience was finite and whose vengeance was absolute. Meanwhile, Audra Charles at Crimson Lights continued her confrontation with Nate Hastings. Her voice was strained, choked with frustration and hurt. I've apologized, Nate. Over and over again. But it's never enough, is it? Nate's expression remained impassive, a wall of indifference and pain that cut deeper than any words. He had made it clear, he was moving on with Victoria Newman, and Audra's repeated attempts at reconciliation were not only futile, they were painful reminders of what she had lost. Audra's fists clenched, her body trembling with emotion, as she realized just how final Nate's decision was. So, that's it, huh? She asked, her voice breaking. You're just done with me? After everything? Nate did not answer. Silence filled the air between them, thick and suffocating. Audra's heart ached, knowing that the man she loved had moved on, and no apology, no plea, could change that reality. Back in LA, the confrontation escalated. Victor leaned closer to Matt, his voice dropping to a deadly whisper. I'm giving you one chance, Matt. One chance to walk away. One chance to live without causing any more harm. But if you step out of line again, if you even think about hurting my family one more time, I promise you, there will be no second chance. No warning. No mercy. Matt swallowed hard, sweat forming at his temples, and for the first time, truly understood the gravity of the situation. He realized he was not just facing an enemy, he was facing a man who had spent his entire life building power, protecting his family, and crushing anyone who threatened that power. And Victor Newman did not forgive. Victor Newman did not forget. Victor Newman did not back down. Meanwhile, Jack continued his briefing with Ashley and Tracy. I'm going to need both of you on high alert, he said. Whatever Victor does, whatever Matt does, we have to be ready. My plan is risky, yes. But inaction will cost us more than any risk we could take. Are you both prepared for that? Ashley nodded slowly, steeling herself. We have to be, Jack. There's no other choice. Tracy looked down, taking a deep breath, then back up at her brother. We'll do it, Jack. But we need to be careful. One wrong move, and it could all fall apart. In LA, the tension reached a breaking point. Victor's presence, his unwavering focus on Matt, created a psychological pressure that was almost unbearable. Every movement Matt made, every breath he took, was scrutinized, analyzed, and met with a silent threat. Victor didn't even need to raise his hand, the aura of control he exuded was enough to make Matt's bravado crumble. Matt tried to talk, tried to rationalize, but Victor's eyes bored into him, making every word seem hollow, meaningless. I'm not here to negotiate, Matt, Victor said, his voice rising slightly. I'm not here to argue about who did what, or who's at fault. You've caused enough pain. You've caused enough chaos. Now it ends. Here. Now. Detective Burrow remained close by, ready to intervene if needed, but it was clear he was more a witness than a participant. Victor Newman had full control of the situation. Every word, every movement, every intention was crystal clear. Matt Clark had crossed a line, and Victor intended to enforce the consequences with absolute precision. Back in Genoa City, Audra sat slumped over a table at Crimson Lights, staring into her coffee, her mind racing with a mix of anger, heartbreak, and disbelief. Nate had made it clear he was done, and there was no going back. Her frustration boiled over, a mix of guilt and pain that she couldn't shake. Every time she looked at Nate, she saw Victoria Newman, a reminder that her past mistakes had cost her the man she loved. And yet, deep down, Audra knew there was no one to blame but herself. Her apologies had fallen on deaf ears, and the reality of her situation was harsh, cruel, and unchangeable. Meanwhile, Victor's confrontation with Matt reached its zenith. "You've underestimated me," Victor said, his voice calm but deadly. "You've underestimated the lengths I'll go to protect my family. And now, Matt, you're going to learn what happens when you cross the Newman line. Permanently." Matt's hands shook slightly, his earlier confidence entirely evaporated. He had no idea how to respond, how to maneuver out of this, how to survive the wrath of a man who had nothing left to prove and everything left to protect. Victor stepped closer, the proximity almost suffocating, the power and intensity radiating from him like heat. "Consider this your final warning, Matt. Walk away. Disappear. Or you'll regret ever thinking you could touch my family." Matt nodded quickly, swallowing hard, realizing that in this battle, he was completely outmatched. Victor Newman had the upper hand in every sense, physically, mentally, and emotionally. And Matt knew it. Back in Genoa City, Jack's plan was already in motion, a series of calculated risks and careful maneuvers designed to neutralize Victor's threat to Jabot. Ashley and Tracy remained tense, their nerves frayed, as they executed each step with precision, knowing that the slightest miscalculation could have catastrophic consequences. Every call, every decision, every move was crucial. Jack's gamble was risky, yes, but the alternative, doing nothing, was unthinkable. And so, across two cities, the tension mounted. Victor in LA, confronting Matt with a deadly seriousness that brooked no argument, Jack in Genoa City, orchestrating a plan that teetered between brilliance and disaster, and Audra, trapped in the emotional fallout of her mistakes with Nate, each character teetered on the edge of chaos. The ripple effects of their actions, decisions, and confrontations promised to reshape the landscape of both cities, creating a web of tension, danger, and intrigue that could not be undone. Victor Newman's confrontation with Matt Clark was not just a meeting of two men, it was the collision of power, vengeance, and unyielding determination. Jack Abbott's risky plan to protect Jabot was not just corporate maneuvering, it was a gamble that could define the future of the Abbott family. And Audra Charles's heartbreak was not just personal, it was a reminder that in a world filled with deception, betrayal, and ambition, some mistakes cannot be undone, and some hearts cannot be reclaimed. As Victor's shadow loomed over Matt, as Jack's plan moved forward with tense precision, and as Audra struggled with the reality of loss and regret, the stage was set for a series of events that would test loyalties, challenge power, and leave a permanent mark on the lives of everyone involved. Victor Newman had made his stance clear: the Newman family does not forgive, does not forget, and does not back down. And in the weeks to come, that ruthless determination would be felt in every confrontation, every decision, and every heart, leaving no doubt that in this world, power, revenge, and family were everything, and crossing the wrong line came at the highest cost imaginable.